The updated spirit guide, RGB number 4. Ghash and the Ghost Gang. Brief summary. In the real Ghostbusters episode, Slimer Come Home. After ruining Winston's birthday party, Slimer leaves the Firehouse for good and wanders the streets of New York, where he soon joins with a bad crowd of Poltergeists. Primary canon. 3 nights in a row, culminating on Winston Zeddemoore's birthday, the Ghostbusters encountered the same group of Poltergeists. And on the 3rd night, they meet Ghash, leader of the Ghost Gang. By feeding on the lesser entities, Ghash was able to increase the group's energy, giving these weaker spirits the ability to move location while together. Due to a mishap at Winston's party, Slimer left the Firehouse and followed several entities to their leader Ghash. Ghash soon absorbed all of these entities, including Slimer, to become unstoppable. The Ghostbusters adjusted their equipment to focus primarily on Slimer's unique frequency and extract him from Ghash. They were then able to trap Ghash and place him in the containment unit. Additional canon. IDW Comics. In a small cameo, in the IDW comic, Ghostbusters Crossing Over, Ghash was seen haunting the Bronx Zoo. We do not see the Ghost Gang. One night, he appeared in the Congo Gorilla Forest exhibit in the southwest section of the zoo. The extreme Ghostbusters were called in to deal with him. Garrett Miller tried to show off and engaged Ghash alone. Ghash blocked the single proton stream. He was then alarmed by something and flew away before the team could bust him. This was only a small snippet in a much larger, multi-dimensional story. Classification. Ghash is a dangerous poltergeist, a cruel, quick, and savvy entity that uses his ghost gang to wreak havoc. He was never scanned by the Ghostbusters, but we would presume he is a powerful Class 5. Class 5 entities are ectoplasmic manifestations of definable, but non-human creatures with some form of intelligence. Speculation includes theories that Class 5s are former human remnant ghosts which have devolved or mutated into other forms as they slowly lost their memories of their former selves. The Ghost Gang are also poltergeists, and although they seem to be a lot weaker, we would still presume they are Class 5s. These Class 5 ghosts are of varying shapes and sizes, with some being totally non-human and some being vaguely humanoid in appearance. Powers. In the world of ghostbusting, there are many different types of entities with unique abilities and traits. One particularly formidable ghost is Ghash, a powerful and feared being with the ability to absorb other spectral entities. This signature trait of spectral absorption sets Ghash apart from other ghosts, making him a force to be reckoned with. Ghash's power of absorption is manifested through a massive mouth in the middle of his torso, resembling a living whirlwind of ectoplasm. This unique ability allows him to consume other ghosts, draining them of their powers and becoming stronger himself. The more entities he absorbs, the bigger and more powerful he becomes. This ability also makes Ghash a formidable opponent for other spirits, as he is able to weaken and defeat other ghosts simply by consuming them. Once absorbed by Ghash, the ghost is unable to escape unless Ghash releases them, and becomes completely drained of their powers until there is nothing left. This gives Ghash a great advantage in battles with other spectral beings. This unique trait also allows him to constantly evolve and become more powerful, making him a constant threat to those who dare to stand against him. And Ghash's powers do not just stop at absorbing the other spirits. As he absorbs other members of his ghost gang, he gained access to extra abilities. This made him even stronger and more versatile in his attacks. Some of the abilities he gained include lasers, supernatural strength, and telekinesis. The laser beams, shot from his eyes, are a powerful offensive weapon that can disintegrate objects and cause significant damage to his enemies. Ghash's supernatural strength allows him to physically overpower his opponents, with the ability to crash through roofs and other obstacles as he grows in size and strength. His telekinetic abilities allow him to control objects with his mind, such as manipulating floorboards and disarming the Ghostbusters by removing their proton packs. Ghash's powers also extend beyond just physical abilities. He has become a roamer, meaning he is no longer confined to a specific location like a standard poltergeist. This allows him to move freely and wreak havoc wherever he pleases, making him a difficult enemy to track down and defeat. The Poltergeists of the Ghost Gang are shown to have the standard powers of Class 5s and can fly, become invisible, become intangible, return attacks, and possess inanimate objects. Personality. When large groups of ghosts band together for threatening haunts and causing chaos, there is always one that stands out and leads the pack. Ghash had the proper personality and appearance for this specific role. Even though he was an evil being that cared for nothing more than immense power, he gave lost ghosts a false sense of security and a feeling of being wanted. Ghash is a pale-skinned ghost wearing a black trench coat and top hat. He has a huge mouth on his belly that he uses to absorb other ghosts. His demeanor appears to be an odd combination of qualities, such as Dracula and the Grim Reaper. The Ghost Gang is a large group of a dozen or more mischievous spirits who long for family and have found it together. They appear willing to sacrifice themselves for the protection of the group as they allow Ghash to absorb them, potentially forever, to aid him against the Ghostbusters. Trivia. In Ghostbusters, Get Real, Issue 2, Ghash's appearance is based on the one that appeared in the Extreme Ghostbusters title sequence. Ghash makes a non-canon cameo on cover B of Ghostbusters, Crossing Over, Issue 2. Ghash appears on the IDW convention variant cover of 35th Anniversary, The Real Ghostbusters. After Peter shoots the trash cans, he mentions he had watched a Clint Eastwood movie the night before. While caught in the vortex, Peter references The Wizard of Oz. During the surprise party, it is revealed Winston's favorite dessert is blueberry fudge cake. In the aftermath of the party, Peter refers to the Ghostbusters' first encounter with Slimer, as seen in the first movie. During the visual commentary on the Real Ghostbusters Complete Collection, Brad Rader comments Slimer's goodbye scene was in part inspired by a scene in the 1941 movie Penny Serenade starring Cary Grant and Irene Dunne. Slimer's psychokinetic energy frequency is 500,000 megahertz. One of the poltergeists resembles Homer Simpson from The Simpsons. It is yellow, bald, and has a white shirt on. This is most likely a coincidence considering this episode aired a year before the original Tracy Ullman shorts aired. On page 15 of Ghostbusters issue number 5, this episode title is referenced on one of the newspaper clippings. The Ghost Gang is visually similar to the Goblin Army in the Jim Henson movie The Labyrinth. Episode summary. The Ghostbusters were out on a night bust. For 3 nights in a row, they had been bested by the same group of poltergeists. The group was conducting roaming attacks on random targets. This was odd, as poltergeists were usually tied to a specific location. As the Ghostbusters patrolled the back alleys of New York, they were suddenly confronted by over a dozen poltergeists in garbage cans. Peter said, "It looks like the trash wants to take us out." Before the team could do anything, the ghosts formed a vortex. Egon reminded the team that poltergeists can't physically hurt you. The ghosts stacked the cans into a huge pile in front of them. Egon looked worried. The tower toppled towards the Ghostbusters and Peter fired. The cans exploded and covered them in garbage. They readied their throwers, but could see something strange in the vortex of ghosts. Ray shouted, "It's showtime," and Winston said, "Just give me some room." Just then, a giant poltergeist lurched from the vortex towards the team. The vortex seemed to surround him. This was Ghash, the prime motivator. As the team swirled around in the air, the poltergeists broke away and flew into the sewers, followed by Ghash. The bust was a bust. Winston said, "Look on the bright side, it can't get any worse." It then started raining. On the way back to the firehouse, Egon couldn't understand why the ghosts were so strong when they clearly weren't haunting this location yesterday. Poltergeists were supposed to be confined to a single location, weakening if they try to move from it. Yet they had somehow moved location and been able to stay just as strong as the night before. Ray fumed over losing again. He speculated the poltergeists were drawing from some other source of energy, and Ghash was feeding on the energy of the small ones. Egon theorized that the ghosts had somehow formed a kind of PKE circuit, making them stronger as a group, allowing them to freely roam while together. The Ghostbusters pulled up to the firehouse. It was eerily quiet, and the lights were all off. Egon, Peter, and Ray let Winston go first and quickly ran around to the side door. Winston called for Janine and Slimer. Just then, the lights came on, and everyone shouted surprise. Slimer flew over and put a party hat on Winston. He was so happy, he actually thought the team had forgot about his birthday. Janine brought in a giant Ghostbusters-themed cake. She told Winston it was his favorite flavor, blueberry fudge cake. He didn't know what to say. Just as Winston was eyeing the cake, Slimer flew over and ate the whole thing in one bite. Winston was clearly upset, but said it was okay, as he was on a diet. Peter was not happy. Egon told him to let it go, but he couldn't, not after Slimer had eaten Winston's birthday cake. Peter berated Slimer. He complained that all he does is eat all the food, that he's useless, and then reminded everyone that he even got slimed in their first meeting. Ray could see Peter had hurt Slimer's feelings. Slimer became invisible and drifted upstairs. Later that night, Janine had gone to the store, and as the Ghostbusters slept, Slimer decided he was going to leave the Firehouse for good. Janine returned with donuts for them both and found a goodbye note he had left. It was a dark and dreary night, the wind howling through the streets of New York City. Ray, Egon, and Winston suited up in their raincoats and prepared to brave the stormy weather. They were determined to search every nook and cranny until they found Slimer. However, Peter was less than enthusiastic. He complained to Janine about constantly getting slimed and said he had no interest in finding their ghostly friend. Despite Peter's lack of interest, the rest of the Ghostbusters split up and went out into the storm. Slimer was wandering the streets of New York City when he stumbled upon a candy store. His big round eyes glistened with excitement as he peered through the closed window, admiring the colorful display of sugary treats. But suddenly, the memory of Peter's harsh words echoed in his mind. Feeling sad and dejected, Slimer turned away from the candy store and continued down the street. As he hovered, he noticed a strange procession of poltergeists marching towards a big building. Curiosity took over and Slimer decided to follow them, being careful not to be noticed. Meanwhile, at the Ghostbusters Firehouse, Peter was itching to join in on the action. Sneaking out, he was surprised to bump into Janine. She asked him where he was going with a raised eyebrow. Peter tried to come up with a believable excuse. Just going for a walk in the rain, he stammered. Janine didn't buy it for a second, but she decided to let him go anyway. Well, if you see Slimer, tell him we miss him, she said. Egon had always been a deep thinker, but today he was lost in thought. As a member of the Ghostbusters team, he had encountered all kinds of ghosts and spirits. But Slimer was like family. Egon knew that Slimer would be a target for the roaming poltergeists they had encountered. They were a mischievous gang of spirits who longed for family, and he knew they would be willing to accept new members into their gang to strengthen the group as a whole. Sure enough, the poltergeists welcomed Slimer with open arms. Ghash, the leader of the poltergeists, had a plan in mind. He saw potential in Slimer and wanted to teach him how to be truly frightening, a force to be feared by both the living and the dead. But little did Ghash know, Slimer was a friendly ghost and was not interested in becoming a villain. Egon found himself walking alone through the streets. As he walked, a group of punks spotted Egon from an alley, their tall figures illuminated by the dim streetlights. Without warning, one of the punks began following Egon. As the punk began to question him, Egon explained he was looking for a ghost. The punk suddenly paused, eyeing Egon with curiosity. Egon continued to stroll unfazed, scanning the streets with his PKE meter, and as he walked with an indifferent expression, the punk suddenly backed off, unsure of what to make of this strange individual. Egon met up with Ray, who was testing a new theory. He figured that if he stayed in the same place for a long enough period of time, everyone he knew would eventually just stroll past. Egon was not convinced. Just then, Ray's second-grade teacher shouted over to him. A couple of blocks over, the streets were deserted, save for a couple of brave souls who were hurrying to find shelter from the downpour. In the deserted streets, a tall figure with glowing eyes and yellow teeth was looming over a smaller, green figure. Ghash, was showing Slimer how to be more intimidating. Slimer, as a timid ghost, was trembling with fear as Ghash pointed to a man in a raincoat and ordered him to slime him. Slimer rushed at the man, wailing and waving his arms. Before the man could defend himself, he was covered in a thick glowing green slime. "Not again," he grumbled. The man in the raincoat turned out to be Peter. He watched Slimer flee into the deserted building and frantically radioed the other Ghostbusters for backup. As the rain poured down outside, the Ghostbusters found themselves standing in an abandoned building, facing Ghash and the Ghost Gang. Something unexpected happened. Ghash opened a huge mouth on his stomach and began to absorb all of the Poltergeists, including Slimer. Slimer tried to get away but was forcibly absorbed. Egon suddenly noticed that the individual frequencies of the ghosts were merging. And if they didn't act fast, Slimer would be lost forever. With no time to waste, they switched their throwers to Slimer's frequency and pulled him out. Their victory was short-lived. Even without Slimer, Ghash was still too powerful. He used telekinesis to remove the Ghostbusters' proton packs and throw them to one side. The floorboards came alive and grabbed the unarmed Ghostbusters. It seemed like all hope was lost. Slimer crept up and grabbed one of the proton wands. He fired at the boards, causing them to drop the Ghostbusters. He dropped the proton thrower, but it kept on firing, just missing Ghash. While the ghost leader was distracted, the Ghostbusters grabbed their traps and packs. Together, they fought back against Ghash, and finally managed to trap him. However, the Ghost Gang had been absorbed by Ghash, and he was full of spirits. The traps were not designed to hold so many entities at once. The Ghostbusters knew they had to act quickly before Ghash broke free. They rushed back to the firehouse and Winston deposited the trap into the containment unit. With bated breath, they watched as the trap closed and the red lights turned to green, signaling their success. The team held a double party for Slimer and Winston, and even Peter admitted he missed Slimer a little. Winston brought out a cake, but Slimer ate it. Luckily, Egon unveiled a backup cake. Ray remembered he had taught Slimer a new trick, showing his part-digested food. And he had the Spud show it off, much to everyone's disgust.